What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to review the 2022 Lowrider S. Now Timms has already gotten one in. I messed up, it got away. Luckily they just got another one in. They had the gray, now they have the black. Lowrider S is only coming in those two colors this year. Now it's no secret, a lot of you have picked up what I like, what I don't like. I even get a lot of negative criticism anytime I knock a bike. So I'm always going to give you guys the facts, but if I don't like something, I'll tell you that. You know, I don't try to hide it. I'm gonna try to give you the information, but I also want to include my own personal opinions in there because that's what makes this fun for me. Now, I know people are critical of some of Harley's pricing decisions, myself included, but I do want to commend them on the Lowrider S, and it did see a price increase, but it was only 400 bucks. Now, when I say it's only 400 bucks, you're going to see why that's a big deal when we go over all the new features that this bike got for 2022. All right, give you a really quick walk around of this new and improved Lowrider S. I know a lot of people were kind of criticizing Harley for some of the models that didn't get updated this year. I have really strong opinions on that, and we'll go over that in another video. I do plan to make a separate video dedicated to my thoughts on that, but this one is about the Lowrider S, so we won't get off in the weeds on that one. So quick walk around just to kind of let you see. I'm sure a lot of you already know what changes have happened, and then I'm sure some of you are starting to kind of see what might have been different from last year, but we're gonna point all that out in this video. How could we not start on the engine this time? So for 2022, the Lowrider S got the 117 Milwaukee 8. Previously, it had the 114. And that one kind of made me scratch my head, only because once the original Lowrider went away, what made the S the S? It was just a normal Lowrider, especially when it came with the 114, because the Street Bob, like right over here, as well as the Fat Bob came with the 114. Now, yeah, it's got inverted front end, the Street Bob doesn't, but the Fat Bob had inverted front end as well. So to me, the Lowrider S for a couple years stopped being an S model. Now I feel like it has regained that title again, bumping up to the 117 cubic inch Milwaukee 8. Now moving up here to the gas tank, this is one of the other big changes that it got. They streamlined this console here. It lays really flat. I love this little model designation right here. And they moved your gauge up here to the handlebar. So you did have two gauges here, right here in the center console. I'll show you guys last year's model in just a second. Now you have one gauge. This is the same gauge that comes on the Fat Bob. So I was hoping for the Sportster S gauge, which is all full digital, has navigation and all that good stuff built in. We didn't get that, but they did update the gauge. All right, so we got lucky. Timms just so happens to have a used Lowrider S in their inventory, so I can show you the old gauge. This is what the old gauge looked like. You have your tack here and your speedo up here. I'm gonna get a side view for you guys just so you can see. Now, a lot of people like this one. I mean, a lot of people. I've heard a lot of comments, read a lot of stuff online where people really miss this. Now, what Harley said was they got feedback from riders saying they wish they didn't have to look down so far to see their gauges, and I do understand that. And super quick, for those that may be interested, this is a used bike in Tim's inventory. So if you're in the area and you're looking for a really nice Lowrider S, this one's already got 2-into-1, got some good bars, got a good fairing. I swear they didn't ask me to do this. I don't get anything if you come buy this bike. I just figured since we were back here looking at it, I would show you guys. Okay, so we're back with the 22. Now, like I was saying, Harley got feedback that riders wanted to be able to see their gauge without kind of looking away from the road so much. I do understand that, and this gauge is going to allow you to do that. And it's kind of in the perfect position, especially if you put a taller fairing, which a lot of people do with this Lowrider S. They run more of what I think is called the club style fairing. I'm a fan of that. Knocks a little more wind down, also looks really good. But I'm a fan of the relocated gauges, honestly. I think it looks good. I like the slimline tank, but let me know which camp you're in. Do you like the older style or do you like the newer style? All right, so we move around to the front, and I know a lot of people watch these videos again and again, but then there's also some people that are only gonna watch one of these videos. There's people that have never seen these videos, so I hate to beat a dead horse, but I do have to point out the obvious that may not be so obvious for some people, so bear with me. Inverted front end on the Lowrider S. To me, Harley Davidson should be doing this on all of their models. Now, I was really hoping that the touring models got inverted front ends this year. That didn't happen. I'd like to see all the models with the inverted front end. To me, it's better for a lot of reasons that we won't get sidetracked on. You also get dual disc front brakes. If you watch my videos, you've heard me say a million times, I do prefer the dual disc front brake. Most people, the majority of people, are not gonna need dual disc front brakes. Dual disc is great if you're like in the mountains, you're on your brakes really hard. It kind of helps them from heating up so much, and it's gonna help them from fading so much. Now, I ride fairly hard in the mountains. I'm not like some knee dragging dude, but I've ridden single disc Harley Davidsons in the mountains and in situations similar to that. I've never had an issue getting the bike to stop. With that, dual disc, in my opinion, is always better, just like with the inverted front end. So moving around to the other side of the bike, you'll see the Lowrider S does come with mid controls. Good job on that one, Harley. If they would have done forward controls like the Fat Bob has forward controls, I don't understand why the Lowrider S mid controls. To me, the Fat Bob should be mids as well. I mean, the Sportster S, their performance bike, they did forward controls. Harley's a big fan of those forwards, man. Like, I don't know what it is. I don't get it. I like the mids. People say, oh, well, the forwards are comfortable on longer rides. I can see, I can see that being true for some people, and I can also see why some people would think that. I've ridden just as far on these mids as I have on forwards. It's never been a personal problem for me. But again, I'm only 5'11", so, my opinion, guys, my opinion. I know I get in trouble for giving my opinion sometimes on my YouTube channel, but that's how I feel. The lighting on this thing, I'm a big fan of. You do have this LED tail light, which I think looks really good. Turn signals leave a little something to be desired. I like a little more streamlined. These aren't bad if they were LED. So we'll move back around to this side of the bike because I want to show you, it's hard to pick up. You would almost need it in a side-by-side comparison. But the tail section of this bike sits 1 inch higher than previously. So you get a little more ground clearance, which means a little bit more lean angle. Always a good thing. Again, when you're riding in the mountains, you're riding up in the hills and stuff, the more lean angle you have, the better. Now, obviously, I've been singing nothing but praises for the Lowrider S. The one thing I don't like about it is that it only comes up for solo riding, so no passenger seat, no passenger pillion, no two-up seat, as well as no pegs. Just like everything with Harley, that can be changed, that can be bought, and prices wildly vary depending on what kind of seat you go with and what kind of pegs you go with. So just to get set up for a passenger, you could get a seat for probably $300. You get a really nice seat for about $500. Same thing with pegs. So if you just want to get like the cheaper pegs that match what Harley gives you from the factory for the rider, you can pick those up fairly cheap. You can also end up spending $200 on pegs depending on what you want to get. But I do wish that this bike came with two-up riding from the factory. I will say it wouldn't look as clean. Like when it's sitting here on the floor, it wouldn't look as good unless Harley did a really nice seat. Seats are very subjective. A lot of the guys on these style bikes like those step-up seats. Usually I see people running something like a Saddleman, and I agree, those look really good, but they're subjective. Some people don't like those. So sitting on the floor, this does look a little bit better, and obviously it's gonna drive the price up just a little bit more. But if Harley was able to give us from a 114 to a 117, taller rear suspension, gauge relocation that I think the majority of people will probably be a fan of for $400 extra bucks, let's just call it $100. They could have given us 2-up riding as well. Now, one of the things I want to start including in these videos is who I think each model is for. I get a ton of questions, I'm, this tall, or I do this type of riding, or I'm coming from this type of bike, or I'm getting my first bike. So there's never going to be like a perfect way to say exactly who this is for. So I'll just kind of do a generalization. Now, your Lowrider S is on the Softail chassis. So that means it's very capable of doing longer distances. This doesn't just have to be an around town bike. But with that, a lot of people are going to want to add saddlebags, which I personally am a fan of. However, it adds to the cost. Depending on what you go with, can determine what you're going to look at spending. It's too all over the board for me to give you a ballpark price even of what you're going to cost to put bags on here. There's soft bags, hard bags, retro bags, all kind of stuff that you can look at doing. Also, a lot of people, like we said, are going to want to change this front fairing. Typically, I see something just like what was on that used Lowrider S I showed you earlier. That's one of the most common things I see, and if you're doing a little bit longer distance, it's just going to help keep the wind off of you. So not even necessarily when it's cold, just from that wind beating up on your chest, fatigues you just a little bit more, so it's nice to knock that off. Now, a lot of people may try to say that this is a young man's bike because it's a performance bike. It's an S model, it's got the big engine, but honestly, being here in the dealership so often, I see just as many older guys that have been riding for years and that are getting off their big bike and just want something fun and sporty, getting on one of these. So it's not necessarily just a young guy's bike. Can this be a beginner's bike? I get that question a lot because I think it is so performance based, and you see these things all over. They've got a great reputation, they look great. So people that are starting to look at Harleys, look at motorcycles in general, end up finding the Lowrider S. Now, I don't want to tell you that it can't be a beginner's bike. However, if you've never ridden at all, this is not where I would start. And it's not just because of the power that it's got. It's going to be the weight. It's also going to be the cost. I mean, you're talking close to 20 grand for this bike. If you're interested in a Harley, I would honestly look at like an 883 or a 1200. And a lot of people will criticize that and say, well, of course, the salesman's going to try to sell you a bike that's too small. That way he can sell you another one. I don't get anything. Even if you come here to Timms and buy bikes, they let me know when you guys come in, and that's awesome. I do appreciate that. But that's it. I get no kind of kickbacks. But if you're just learning to ride, weight is going to be a big deal. Seat height is going to be a big deal. And usually budget is going to be a pretty big deal. So if you can pick up a Harley Davidson for around 10 grand that's lighter, has a lower seat height, you can spend a little bit of time on that, learning to ride, I would advise you to do that. If you're super comfortable with motorcycles, you've ridden dirt bikes, maybe you raced motocross, you've done some stuff like that, you have the general knowledge down, you're very comfortable on a bike, comfortable shifting, using the clutch, doing things like that, I'm gonna say, and people will disagree with this as well, this can be your first bike, like your first on-road bike, your first Harley. Yes, it makes a ton of power. Respect that power. It's just like most people's car. Most people's car will run 100 miles an hour, some even more. That doesn't mean you have to do it. Ride it responsibly, be respectful of the power, and there's no reason someone who's comfortable on a motorcycle in general can't make this their first bike. All right, that's it, guys. As you can tell, I am a mega fan of this bike. I think it's one of the best bikes Harley Davidson has ever done. I would definitely consider buying one myself, and I know based on all the comments I've gotten on other videos that you guys are big fans of this one as well. Thanks for watching the video, especially to you guys that are still watching this, that have watched it at the very end. It is greatly, greatly appreciated. I do want to remind you, if you're not already subscribed, please consider doing so and giving me a thumbs up on the video. It helps in the algorithm, helps more people see the channel. And I also want to give a huge thanks to all of you that are still watching, that watch the videos all the way to the very end. I'm grateful for anyone that watches the videos for any length of time, but especially those of you that I constantly see comment on every single video. You know who you are. Thankfully, there's too many to name. Thank you, and I'll see you guys in the next one.